My name is Mallory Wren, and I was 35 years old when my family left me out of my grandmother's final goodbye. Not because I was unreachable. Not because I was too far away. Not because I had stopped loving her. I was 12 minutes from Meadowlark Hospice House, sitting in the parking lot of the pharmacy with the vanilla lip balm she liked, when my mother texted me, "Do not come." Grandma asked for only peaceful people. Peaceful people. That was what my mother called the family members who agreed with her. 2 hours later, my grandmother died while my mother, my father, my sister, and half the relatives from Cedar Hill stood around her bed, singing the hymn she always hated. They told everyone I could not be bothered to come. They told the hospice nurse I had been difficult. They told me Grandma Etta wanted quiet, not my paperwork energy. 3 days later, they needed my signature to release a $312,800 estate sale and settle my sister's business debt before the bank deadline. That was when Nurse Simone Alvarez called me and said, "Mallory, your grandmother recorded something for you before she passed." What my family did not know was that Grandma Etta had asked her nurse to record everything, not secretly, not illegally, clearly, on the hospice tablet, with her own voice, her own consent, and my name in the first sentence. And by Friday morning, in an attorney's conference room, my mother would hear my grandmother say the one thing she had tried hardest to bury. "Do not let them tell Mallory I sent her away." Before I tell you what happened next, welcome back to Hush and Tell Stories. If you have ever been pushed out of a room where love should have made space for you, this story is for you. Tell me in the comments who tried to control the final version of your family story, and subscribe if quiet proof is the kind of truth you understand. I grew up in Cedar Hill, Indiana, a town with brick storefronts, soybean fields, and people who knew your family history before they knew your middle name. My father, Gideon Wren, owned Wren Farm Supply on Route 19. He sold feed, fencing, seed, work gloves, and the kind of advice men gave each other near the counter while pretending they were only discussing weather. He was generous with customers, stubborn with bills, and helpless around emotional conflict unless the conflict came with a receipt. My mother, Paula, was different. She did not avoid conflict, she managed it. She was the kind of woman who could sit beside a hospital bed, smooth a blanket, and decide who was allowed to cry. She volunteered at church, ran the funeral luncheon committee, and sent handwritten birthday cards to women she disliked because manners mattered more than truth. In public, people called her gracious. At home, grace usually meant everyone else making room for her version of events. My younger sister, Lee, was 2 years behind me and somehow always considered too delicate for consequences. If Lee quit piano, she was exploring herself. If I stopped anything, I lacked commitment. If Lee forgot a bill, she was overwhelmed. If I asked why she forgot, I was harsh. If Lee cried, Mom moved toward her. If I cried, Mom told me I was making people uncomfortable. By the time I was 9, I had learned that comfort mattered more than accuracy in our house. By 12, I had learned that the safest daughter is the useful one. Useful daughters do not need much. Useful daughters make lists. Useful daughters remember appointments, carry groceries, sort medicine bottles, and go quiet when the beautiful daughter needs the room. I was useful. I helped Dad at the store after school. I reconciled delivery tickets before I knew the word reconcile. I learned where Mom kept the checkbook, which envelopes were overdue, which relatives could be asked for favors, and which questions made everyone look away. Grandma Etta noticed. Etta Langford was my mother's mother, though you would never have guessed it from how differently they handled truth. Grandma Etta lived in a yellow craftsman house on Juniper Street with a wide front porch, a pear tree in the side yard, and a kitchen table scarred by 40 years of card games, pie crusts, and family meetings that went badly because she refused to whisper around foolishness. She wore house dresses, red lipstick, and sneakers with no apology. She kept peppermint candies in every purse and used the phrase, "Don't dress that lie up for church," at least once a month. When I was little, I thought she was funny. When I got older, I realized she was brave. Grandma Etta loved Lee. She did, that matters. She kept Lee's school pictures on the wall, bought her birthday gifts, and praised her when praise was earned. But she did not worship her. That made my mother uncomfortable. Lee is sensitive, Mom would say. Grandma would answer, then stop letting her touch hot stoves and calling the burns personality. Mom hated that, I loved it. I loved Grandma's house because there, the truth was not considered rude just because someone preferred the lie. At Grandma's table, if you broke a plate, you swept it. If you borrowed $20, she wrote it down. If you said you forgot, she said forgetting did not erase ink. That is probably why I became a county records archivist. It was not a glamorous job, but it fit me. I worked for the Franklin County Records Office, preserving old deeds, marriage licenses, probate files, land maps, council minutes, cemetery records, and handwritten ledgers that smelled like dust and secrets. I scanned documents, restored damaged pages, built searchable indexes, and helped people find the paper trail of things their families had sworn never happened. My family treated my job like a personality flaw. Dad called me the file cabinet when he was teasing. Lee said I made the past sound like homework. Mom said, Mallory never forgets anything, but she did not mean it as praise. To me, records were not cold. Records were mercy. They kept the quiet person from disappearing after the loud person retold the room. For most of my adult life, I was the one who did not disappear only because I kept proof that I had been there. At 23, when Dad's store had a slow winter and payroll was short, I transferred him $1,200 from my emergency fund. Mom called it a blessing. Dad said he would pay it back when spring orders came in. He paid back $300. At 25, when Lee's first boutique job ended because she was no T meant for toxic management, I paid her car insurance for 4 months so she could get stable. She posted brunch photos during that same 4 months and told people I was jealous of her social life. At 27, when Mom said Grandma Etta needed help with her roof deductible, I drove over and discovered the roof had been repaired 6 weeks earlier. The money was actually for Lee's past due studio rent. When I asked Mom why she lied, she said, "Because you make honesty so unpleasant." That sentence stayed with me, not because it was clever, because it explained our whole family. In my mother's world, the truth was only welcome if it arrived politely, quietly, and already paid. The real shift began when Grandma Etta fell in her garden. She was 84, trimming dead hydrangeas because she refused to let shrubs look lazy, when her left foot caught the edge of a brick path. She broke her hip and spent 3 weeks in rehab. After that, she could still live at home, but not without help. Mom called a family meeting. That is what she called it when she had already decided what should happen and wanted witnesses. We gathered at Grandma's yellow house on a Sunday afternoon. Dad stood by the counter. Lee sat at the table scrolling on her phone. Mom had brought a legal pad and a tone of authority. Grandma sat in her recliner, wearing purple sweatpants and looking irritated that everyone was speaking about her like she had already become furniture. "We need a care schedule," Mom said. "Good," Grandma said. "Put yourself down for Tuesdays." Mom smiled tightly. "I have church board meetings every other Tuesday. Then put yourself down for the Tuesdays without Jesus." Dad coughed into his hand. Lee said she could help with emotional support, but not mornings, nights, lifting, driving, medication, bills, or anything involving bathrooms. That left me. I worked full-time, lived 35 minutes away, and had my own life, though my family always considered my life more adjustable because it was quieter. I was not married. I did not have children. I did not run a business that looked good online. Therefore, my time was treated like available storage. I made the schedule, not because it was fair, because Grandma needed care. At first, I went 3 times a week, then 4, then every evening after work. I organized pill boxes, changed sheets, sat through cardiology appointments, argued with insurance, labeled freezer meals, balanced her checkbook, and wrote down everything because Grandma insisted. She had a blue spiral notebook on the kitchen counter titled Proof for when they get creative. I told her that was dramatic. She said, "So is being robbed politely." In that notebook, she recorded who came, who called, who paid, who canceled, and who promised things they never did. She wrote in small, slanted handwriting. Mallory brought groceries, paid $87.32, reimbursed from checking. Paula called, said she was busy with luncheon. Lee posted photo from nail salon, did not answer my call. Mallory drove to cardiologist. 6 hours including pharmacy. Gideon fixed porch light, took 3 jars of pears. I laughed at that last one. Grandma said, "Your father gets sentimental around preserves." Lee visited when there was an audience. Mother's Day, Christmas Eve, Grandma's birthday. She would arrive in soft sweaters, bring flowers someone else arranged, kiss Grandma's cheek, take 4 photos, and leave before dishes. On Facebook, she captioned them things like, "My favorite woman, my heart, family over everything." I was usually in the kitchen rinsing plates. Mom liked every post. Grandma did too sometimes, just to be ornery. "Let the child have her little stage," she would say. Everybody needs a hobby. But the stage became expensive. Lee opened a home fragrance shop called Golden Hearth Collective when she was 32. It sold candles, room sprays, handmade soaps, dried flower bundles, and overpriced matches in glass jars. Online, it looked like a dream. Warm lighting, amber bottles, cream labels, Lee in linen aprons holding a mug near her face. In reality, it was a lease she should not have signed, inventory bought on credit, a payroll system she did not understand, and a tax account she meant to set up for 9 months. By the second year, Golden Hearth was not a business. It was an emergency with a logo. Mom called it Lee's passion. Dad called it a tough season. Grandma called it a candle store on fire. Lee stopped speaking to Grandma for 10 days after that. During that same period, Grandma's health worsened. Congestive heart failure, kidney issues, small strokes. One hospitalization, then another. Eventually, she chose hospice care at Meadowlark Hospice House, a small brick building outside Cedar Hill with maple trees, soft lamps, and nurses who spoke gently without lying. I was there every day. Mom was there when people from church might visit. Lee came when he needed photos or absolution. Dad came quietly after work and sat near the window, holding Grandma's hand like a man apologizing without words. Grandma named me as her primary care contact. Mom hated that. She did not say it directly at first. She said things like, "It would be easier if all calls came through me," and "hospice gets confused when too many people are involved," and "you know I am her daughter." Grandma heard one of those sentences and opened one eye. Then act like it. Mom left the room for 20 minutes. That was Grandma Etta, half dying and still making people earn their titles. 2 weeks before she died, Grandma asked me to bring the green recipe box from her house. It sat in the pantry behind a flour tin. I thought she wanted an old recipe. Instead, she told me to close the door. Inside the box was not food. It was paper, a copy of her updated will, the recorded transfer on death deed for the Juniper Street house, a bank beneficiary form, the blue caregiver notebook, a letter addressed to me, and a sealed envelope addressed to Rachel Thorne, her estate attorney. I sat beside her bed and stared. "Grandma, do not grandma me. I am not dead because papers exist." That made me laugh even though I was crying. She explained slowly, with long pauses between breaths, that the house on Juniper Street was going to me. Not because she did not love my mother or Lee, but because, in her words, they would sell the roof over my memory to pay for a scented candle mistake. She left small specific amounts to Mom, Dad, and Lee. She left her jewelry to be divided. She left Dad the old roll-top desk because he had always loved it. She left Lee the dining set if she can pick it up without making a speech. But the house and most of the savings were assigned to a modest trust managed by Rachel Thorne, with instructions that I could live there, rent it, preserve it, or sell it only after 1 full year, and only if the proceeds were not used for another family member's business debt. I said that sounded harsh. Grandma turned her head toward me. Harsh is making the person who shows up pay for the people who don't. I did not know what to say. She reached for my hand. "Mallory, they will try to make you feel ugly for being accurate." That sentence landed somewhere deep. They will say I was confused, she continued. They will say you influenced me. They will say I wanted peace. I do want peace. I just want it with locked drawers. I laughed through tears. Then she grew serious. If they keep you out of a room, do not assume I asked for the door to close. I should have understood that warning. But when someone you love is dying, you do not always hear the future inside the sentence. Sometimes you only hear the breath it took to say it. The day of Grandma's final goodbye was a Thursday in October. I had worked half a day because Grandma had been stable that morning. Nurse Simone called at 1:18 in the afternoon. Her voice was kind, but there was a different weight in it. Mallory, you should come when you can. I stood up from my desk so fast my chair rolled back into a file cart. How soon? Soon. That word changes your body. I grabbed my bag, told my supervisor, and drove toward Meadowlark. On the way, I stopped at Holly's pharmacy because Grandma's lips had been dry the night before and she hated the cherry balm they used at hospice. She wanted vanilla. Always vanilla. I was in the pharmacy parking lot when Mom texted, "Do not come." Grandma asked for only peaceful people. I stared at the message, peaceful people. My hands went cold. I called Mom, no answer. I called Dad, no answer. I called Lee, straight to voicemail. I called Meadowlark and asked for Grandma's room. The receptionist put me on hold, then returned with a voice that had changed. "Ms. Langford is resting with family right now. I am family. I understand. Did she say I should not come? I am not the nurse in the room." That was not an answer. I drove anyway. When I reached Meadowlark, there were cars everywhere. Mom's white SUV, Dad's truck, Lee's blue sedan, Aunt Carmen's minivan, Uncle Paul's pickup, 2 church ladies' cars. People I did not even know well enough to have their numbers were inside the building saying goodbye to my grandmother while I stood in the parking lot with vanilla lip balm in my hand. At the front desk, a young volunteer looked at the visitor sheet. "Room 8 is at family limit right now." "Who set the limit?" She looked down. "I think Mrs. Wren requested quiet." "My mother." "Yes. I am Grandma Etta's primary care contact." The volunteer's eyes widened slightly. She looked toward the hall like she wanted help. Before she could answer, Mom appeared. She moved quickly, wearing a beige cardigan and the face she used when someone might interrupt the version of herself she preferred. "Mallory," she said softly. "Not now." I looked past her. "I need to see Grandma. She is peace." "Full, I need to see her." She asked for no conflict. "I am not conflict." Mom's eyes sharpened. "You bring a certain energy." I almost laughed because grief does strange things to the body. "My grandmother is dying, and you are talking about my energy." Her voice dropped. "Do not make this about you." There it was, the family spell. Do not make this about you meant accept what is happening to you without naming it. "I am going in," I said. Mom stepped closer. "If you love her, you will respect her final wish." That stopped me, not because I believed her fully, because the smallest chance that Grandma had truly asked for quiet hit me like a closed fist. I had spent years respecting Grandma's choices, her medications, her hospice decision, her refusal of another hospital transfer, her lavender lotion, her vanilla lip balm, her stubborn, sacred no. What if this was another no? Mom saw my hesitation and softened her face. She said she wanted no paperwork, no tension, just family love. Paperwork, that was the word that made doubt enter. Grandma never used paperwork as an insult. Mom did. But I was standing in a hospice lobby with my dying grandmother down the hall, a volunteer staring at the desk, my mother crying perfectly, and every childhood rule pressing on my throat. Do not be difficult. Do not make a scene. Do not upset people. I backed away. "Tell her I came," I said. Mom looked at me too long, then she said, "Of course." I sat in my car for 40 minutes. I know because the pharmacy receipt was still in my cup holder, time-stamped 1:42, and my phone showed 2:22 when Lee came outside. She walked quickly to her car with mascara streaks on her face and a gift bag under one arm. I got out. "Lee." She stopped like I had caught her stealing. "What did Grandma say?" Lee wiped under one eye. "It was beautiful." "That is not what I asked." She was barely speaking. Did she ask for me? Lee looked toward the building. Mom said not to do this. Did she ask for me? My sister's mouth trembled, and for one moment I saw something real under all the softness. Then it disappeared. She wanted peace, Mallory. She got into her car and left. At 3:06, Dad came out. His face was gray. He looked 10 years older than he had that morning. Dad. He stopped. I held up the lip balm like an idiot, like a child with an offering. Did she ask for me? His eyes filled. I do not know. What do you mean you do not know? Your mother said. I cut him off. What did Grandma say? He closed his eyes. She was trying to talk. Simone was close to her. Your mother told us she was saying she wanted everyone calm. Did you hear my name? He did not answer. That was the first honest thing he gave me that day. The hospice doors opened again. Mom came out with Aunt Carmen and 2 church women. They were crying. Mom saw me near Dad and her face changed. It is over, she said. 2 words, no softness, no apology, no come inside now, just it is over. I looked at my father. He looked at the asphalt. Grandma Etta died while I was standing 12 feet from the door. That is a particular kind of grief. Not absence. Exclusion. It does not just break your heart. It reorganizes the memory around the door you were not allowed to open. The next 2 days moved in that awful blur after a death when time becomes tasks. Funeral home. Obituary. Flowers. Church calls. Meal trains. People texting heart emojis because they do not know what else to do. I was not included in planning. Mom wrote the obituary. It said Etta was surrounded by her loving family. I was listed after Lee, in the sentence with grandchildren and cousins, even though Grandma had only 2 grandchildren, and I had spent 6 years as her caregiver. Lee posted a black and white photo of herself holding Grandma's hand, my favorite soul. I was honored to be with you until the end. I stared at that caption until my phone went dark. I did not comment. I did not tell people she had been in the room because my mother allowed her, and I was in the parking lot because my mother stopped me. Not yet. Grief is exhausting enough without becoming your own press secretary. On Sunday night, Mom called, not texted, called. That alone told me something was coming. Mallory, we need to meet with Rachel Thorne on Tuesday morning. Grandma's attorney? Yes. I know who she is. Do not be sharp. I looked at the wall of my apartment where Grandma had once helped me hang 3 framed maps from work because she said a records archivist needed maps or people might think I was only decorative. What is the meeting about? The estate. Rachel will tell me. Mom was silent for half a second. Then, there are family decisions to make before then. What decisions? She sighed. Your grandmother made some choices near the end that may not reflect her best self. My hand tightened around the phone. What does that mean? It means grief, illness, medication. Influence, we do not want this to become ugly. Who is we? Your father, Lee, and I? Grandma's documents are with Rachel. Yes, Mom said, but documents are not the same as family understanding. There it was again. Documents when paper helped me. Family understanding when paper helped them. What do you want, Mom? She softened her voice. We need you to sign a family settlement agreement. I closed my eyes. For what? To keep things fair. Fair how? The house should be sold. The proceeds should be divided equally. Your sister's business is in serious trouble. Your father has guaranteed some obligations. There is a bank deadline. We need to handle everything as a family before outsiders make it worse. How much? She paused. How much what? How much is the debt? Another pause. $312,800. There it was, an exact number. Grief had barely cooled and they already had a total. Lee owes $312,800. Mom's voice sharpened. Not Lee, the family. No, Lee's store. Golden Hearth supports this family. Golden Hearth sells candles. Do not be cruel. I am being accurate, she exhaled. Your grandmother would want peace. No, I said. Grandma would want receipts. Mom hung up. Tuesday morning, I arrived at Rachel Thorne's office with the green recipe box in a tote bag, and a grief so heavy, it made every hallway feel longer. Rachel's office was on the 2nd floor of an old limestone building downtown. She was in her early 60s, with cropped gray hair, black-framed glasses, and the calm of a woman who had watched families become strangers over end tables and bank accounts. Mallory, she said when I arrived. I am sorry. I nodded because if I spoke, I might fall apart. My parents and Lee were already in the conference room. Mom wore black and pearls. Dad wore his dark suit, the one that fit badly because he only wore it for funerals. Lee wore a cream sweater and looked beautifully broken, which was one of her skills. There were 2 empty chairs on their side of the table. 1 empty chair on mine. That detail told me more than it should have. Rachel began with formalities. She reviewed Grandma's date of death, the will, the transfer on death deed, the bank beneficiary designations, and the trust instructions. Her voice was steady, factual, respectful. Grandma's house on Juniper Street passed to me. Her investment account, valued at approximately $184,000 after final expenses, went into a trust for maintenance of the house for 1 year, with remaining funds to be distributed later, according to specific instructions. Mom received Grandma's jewelry, except for 1 locket left to Lee and 1 ring left to me. Dad received the roll-top desk. Lee received the dining set and $15,000. There were charitable gifts to the library and hospice. Mom sat very still. Lee cried harder when she heard $15,000, but not the way someone cries from gratitude. Rachel finished reading. Then Mom folded her hands. Rachel, with respect, we believe Etta was not herself near the end. Rachel looked at her. These documents were executed 8 months ago before hospice. Mom blinked. She was already declining. She was medically competent at the time of signing. Her doctor provided a capacity letter. Dad looked at Mom. That was the first time I realized he did not know the documents had been signed that long ago. Lee spoke next. Grandma loved all of us. She would never give Mallory everything. I looked at her. She did not give me everything. You know what I mean? No, I said. That is the problem. Everyone keeps saying that. Mom reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. We have had a family settlement agreement drafted. Rachel's expression did not change, but the room cooled. By whom? A lawyer Lee knows. Rachel held out her hand. Mom gave her the papers. Rachel read in silence. I watched her face, but good attorneys do not spend expressions cheaply. Finally, she said, this agreement asks Mallory to disclaim her interest in the house, waive any claim to caregiver reimbursement, authorize immediate sale of the property, and consent to proceeds being used to satisfy Golden Hearth collective obligations, Wren Farm supply guarantees, and related family debts before any distribution. Her voice remained calm. Mine did not. Caregiver reimbursement? Mom's eyes flicked toward me. Rachel looked at me. Your grandmother included a memorandum stating that you paid certain expenses and provided substantial care. She did not create a separate claim, but she documented it. Mom said, that memorandum is exactly the kind of thing we are concerned about. I stared at my mother. You are concerned Grandma remembered who came? Lee wiped her face. This is not about that. It is entirely about that. Mom's voice turned soft and dangerous. Mal. Ori, this is why Grandma needed peace at the end. You make everything a record. The room went quiet. Rachel looked up. What do you mean Grandma needed peace at the end? Mom's eyes narrowed. This is not relevant. Rachel turned to me. Mallory. I swallowed. They told me not to come. Mom texted that Grandma asked for only peaceful people. I was at the hospice. They kept me out. Dad looked down. Lee looked at the table. Rachel said, that is not what I was told. My head lifted. What were you told? That you had decided not to come because of family conflict. My mother said quickly, that is not exactly. Rachel's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and stood. Excuse me. She stepped into the hallway. Through the glass wall, I saw her answer, listen, and look back toward the conference room. When she returned, her face had changed. That was Simone Alvarez from Meadowlark Hospice House, she said. My mother stiffened. Rachel continued. She is on her way here. She has something Etta asked her to deliver. Mom's lips parted. What does that mean? Rachel sat. It means we wait. Those 12 minutes were some of the longest of my life. Mom whispered to Dad. Dad did not answer. Lee texted rapidly under the table. I sat with my hands folded around the handle of the green recipe box, feeling the dented metal press into my palm. When Simone Alvarez arrived, she was still in navy scrubs under a gray coat. She was in her late 40s, with tired eyes, silver threaded through her dark hair, and a presence that made the room straighten. Nurses carry a kind of authority people do not always notice until they use it. She looked at me first. "Mallory," I stood without meaning to. She crossed the room and took both my hands. "She asked for you," Simone said quietly. "I am sorry you were not told the truth." Something inside me gave way, not loudly, just enough that I had to sit back down. Mom stood. "This is inappropriate. Hospice privacy," Simone turned to her. "Mrs. Wren, Etta gave explicit permission for me to share the recording with Mallory and with Ms. Thorne. She asked me to document her request in the chart." Rachel gestured to the empty chair. "Please sit." Simone placed a hospice tablet on the conference table and set a sealed envelope beside it. Before Etta passed, she asked me to record a message. She was alert. I documented orientation to person, place, and situation. She knew what she was asking. She also asked me to note who was present and who was requested. Mom's face had gone pale. Lee whispered, "Mom." Dad looked at Simone like a man afraid of rescue arriving too late. Rachel said, "You may play it." Simone tapped the screen. Grandma Etta appeared in the video, propped against white pillows, thinner than she had looked even the day before, but unmistakably herself. The oxygen tube sat under her nose. Her hair was brushed back. Her eyes were tired, but clear. For a second, I could not breathe. Then she spoke. "Mallory girl." Her voice was rough, but it was hers. My hand flew to my mouth. "I asked for you," Grandma said. "If they tell you I did not, they are lying." Mom made a small sound. Rachel lifted one hand without looking at her. The video continued. "I do not have much wind left, so I am saying this plain. Paula is upset because I would not change the house. Lee is scared because her store is sinking. Gideon is ashamed because he signed guarantees he did not understand. None of that is your bill." Dad closed his eyes. Grandma took a breath. "Your mother told me you would bring paperwork and tension. I told her you bring truth and vanilla lip balm." A broken laugh came out of me. Simone's eyes filled. Grandma continued. "They took my phone for a while, said I needed quiet. Simone gave it back when I asked. I told them to call you. I said your name 3 times. If you are not here when I go, it is not because I sent you away." The room was silent, except for the video. Grandma looked slightly off camera. "Simone, make sure Rachel gets the envelope." Simone's voice answered softly in the recording. "I will." Then Grandma looked back. "Mallory, the green recipe box is not recipes. You know that. Use it. Do not let them turn your care into control. Do not let them sell my house to save a business built on other people's candles and your father's fear." Lee started crying. This time, it sounded different. Grandma swallowed. "I love Paula, I love Lee, I love Gideon. Love does not mean I let them spend you." Mom covered her face. The video paused for a breath, then Grandma's voice softened. "I wanted your hand at the end. If I do not get it, I want you to know you were there in every way that counted. Every pill box, every ride, every night you sat in the ugly green chair pretending it was comfortable. Every time you brought me pears, even though I said I was tired of pears. You were there." I was crying now. No use pretending otherwise. Grandma smiled faintly. "Do not be afraid of the room when the paper comes out. They taught you that truth is cold because they liked you warm and paying. Stay accurate, baby. Accurate is not unloving." Then she said the sentence that changed the room forever. "Do not let them tell Mallory I sent her away." The video ended. For a moment, nobody moved. I had imagined many things in the 2 days after Grandma died. I imagined she had asked for me and nobody told me. I imagined she had been too weak to know. I imagined Mom had lied. I imagined Dad had failed me. I imagined Lee had chosen her own comfort again. But hearing Grandma say it did something different. It did not make the wound smaller. It made the wound stop arguing with me. Rachel folded her hands on the table. "Simone, is there a corresponding chart note?" "Yes." Simone opened a folder. "Etta requested Mallory Wren be called at approximately 1:09 in the afternoon. I informed Paula Wren. Paula stated she would handle family notification. At 1:31, Etta asked whether Mallory had arrived. At 1:46, Etta asked for the tablet recording. At 2:12, Etta again asked if Mallory was coming. At 2:19, Paula stated Mallory had chosen not to come. I looked at my mother. She did not look back. Dad whispered, "Paula." Mom's face crumpled, but whether from guilt or exposure, I did not know. Lee turned toward her. "You said Mallory did not want to upset Grandma." Mom snapped, "You heard what you wanted." Lee recoiled. Simone said quietly. Etta was not confused. Mom turned on her. "You are a nurse, not a lawyer." "No," Simone said. "I am the nurse who was in the room." That sentence landed with a force no title could match. Rachel opened the sealed envelope Simone had brought. Inside was a single page in Grandma's handwriting, dated 2 days before her death. Rachel read it aloud. "Rachel, if Paula or Lee try to challenge the house papers by saying Mallory pressured me, show them the notebook. If they say Mallory stayed away at the end, ask Simone for the recording. If they say this is not about money, ask for Lee's debt total." Rachel looked up. "Mrs. Wren, what is Golden Hearth's current debt?" Mom said nothing. Lee whispered, "Mom," Dad answered, voice rough. $312,800. Rachel wrote it down. "Thank you." Mom looked at him like he had betrayed her. He looked back like he had just realized he had been betraying himself for years. I opened the green recipe box. The sound was small, metal against metal, a little click, but every person in that room heard it. I placed the blue caregiver notebook on the table, then the tax receipts, then the pharmacy receipts, then the appointment calendar, then a stack of printed bank transfers from my account. Rachel looked at me. "You do not have to do this." "I know, but I did, not because the law required every item, because my family had lived too long in the comfort of uncounted labor." I opened the notebook to the summary page I had made after Grandma went into hospice. 6 years, I said. 1,428 documented hours of care. 41 medical appointments. 18 overnight stays after falls or medication changes. $39,260 in unreimbursed expenses I never asked Grandma to repay because she was my grandmother and I loved her. Lee's face changed, not enough but some. Mom whispered, "This is vulgar." I looked at her. "No, Mom, vulgar was keeping me out of the room and asking me to sign away the house 3 days later." Dad covered his eyes. I continued. "Grandma did not leave me the house because I tricked her. She left it because she saw what everyone else called normal." Rachel slid the family settlement agreement back toward Mom. "My client will not sign this." Mom's head lifted. "You cannot speak for her." Rachel looked at me. I said, "I will not sign it." Lee leaned forward. "Mallory, please, you do not understand what happens if we cannot pay." "I do understand, you lose a business. It is my life." "No," I said, "it is your store. Grandma's house was her life." Lee cried harder. "I know I made mistakes." "I believe you." That surprised her. Then I said, "But my grief is not a refinancing plan." Dad made a sound then. Not quite a sob, not quite a cough. Something from deep inside a man who had been hiding behind women's voices for too long. "I signed the guarantees," he said. Mom turned. "Gideon?" He shook his head. "No, I signed them. I thought Lee would get through Christmas sales. Paula said the house sale would fix it if Etta would be reasonable. Then Etta died. Then Paula said Mallory would sign because she always does what needs doing." My mother stared at him. I stared too, not because I was surprised by the facts, because for once, Dad was saying them in the room where they mattered. He looked at me. "I am sorry." Mom said, "This is not the time." Dad sighed. "Dee, it is exactly the time." The words echoed back from some better version of him I had waited years to meet. Lee wiped her face. "I did not know Grandma asked for you." I looked at her. "You knew I was outside." She flinched. "Yes. And you left." Her mouth trembled. "Yes." That was the first honest answer my sister had given me in years. Rachel closed the estate folder. The documents stand. The transfer on death deed is recorded. The trust instructions are clear. If anyone wishes to challenge them, they may file through the court. Based on what I have seen, I would advise you to consider carefully before doing so. Mom's voice went cold. So Mallory gets rewarded for turning my mother against me. Simone stood. She was not turned against you. She was awake to you. The room went still. That sentence did not sound rehearsed. It sounded like something Simone had been holding since Thursday afternoon. Mom picked up her purse. I will not be spoken to this way by strangers. I looked at her. The stranger was allowed in the room. She stopped. I did not raise my voice. You let church women into Grandma's final goodbye. You let relatives who had not washed one set of sheets. You let Lee take photos. You let Dad stand there not knowing what to do. But you kept me outside with lip balm in my hand because you were afraid Grandma would tell me the truth before you could turn her death into a negotiation. Mom's face twisted. I was losing my mother. So was I that stopped her, maybe only for a second, but I saw it land. Lee whispered, Mallory. I turned to her. What? She looked younger than 33, tired, scared, stripped of the lighting she preferred. I am sorry I posted that picture. The favorite soul post, the hand, the caption. I said, that is not the thing I need you to be sorrier for. She nodded slowly. I am sorry I walked out while you were in the parking lot. I did not forgive her then, but I heard it. There is a difference. The meeting ended without signatures. No family settlement, no immediate sale, no house converted into debt relief. Rachel kept the original documents. I kept the green recipe box. Simone gave me a copy of Grandma's recording on a drive, sealed in a small envelope, along with information about how to request the hospice chart summary properly. At the door, Simone touched my arm. She waited as long as she could. I broke then, not in front of my mother, in front of the nurse who had witnessed the truth. Simone held my shoulders while I cried in the hallway of an attorney's office, and all I could think was that this woman, who had known Grandma for 3 weeks, had protected her voice better than her own daughter had protected her goodbye. The fallout did not explode. It leaked. That is how family truth usually moves through a town like Cedar Hill. First whispers, then corrections, then someone at church saying, I heard there was some trouble with Etta's estate, while holding a deviled egg like a microphone. Mom tried her version first. She told people I had made Grandma's death about money. She said I had brought documents to an estate meeting before Grandma was even buried. She said I had always resented Lee. She said grief made people cruel. For once, the lie did not travel alone. Dad told Uncle Paul the truth, not all of it. Enough. He said Grandma had asked for me and I had not been called. He said the house was never meant to pay Lee's debt. He said he had signed guarantees and regretted it. He did not make Mom the only villain, which mattered more than a dramatic confession would have. Aunt Carmen called me the next week. I was in the room, she said. I know. I heard your grandmother ask something. Paula said she was asking for peace. I did not question it. I waited. I should have. Yes, I am sorry. Thank you. The apology did not give me the goodbye back, but it gave one more witness her own memory. Lee's business did not survive January. Golden Hearth Collective closed after the holiday season. The lease was broken. Inventory was sold in bulk to a discount store 2 counties over. Creditors did what creditors do. Dad had to negotiate the guarantees. He sold a delivery truck and a small wooded lot behind the feed store to cover part of it. Not the house, not Grandma's house, his own assets. Lee did not speak to me for 2 months. Then one night she texted. I watched the video again in my head all day. I did not answer immediately. Then she sent another. I keep hearing Grandma say I was scared. She was right, I wrote back. Fear does not excuse what you did. She replied, I know, that was new. Mom sent nothing. No apology, no note, no acknowledgement that Grandma had asked for me. But a month later, a small padded envelope arrived with no return address. Inside was the vanilla lip balm I had dropped in the hospice parking lot. Someone had found it, or Mom had kept it, or Dad had placed it in the mail without a word. IN. Ever found out? For 2 days, I could not touch it. Then I put it inside the green recipe box. Not because it was sweet, because it was evidence of the door. Rachel helped me settle the estate slowly. The Juniper Street house came to me, but I did not move in right away. I could not. For months, I entered only to water plants, collect mail, and sit at the kitchen table where Grandma had once called a lie dressed up for church still a lie. Her house was full of her in the ordinary ways that hurt worst. A cardigan on the back of a chair, a grocery list with prune juice written twice, a library bookmark on the arm of the sofa, a coffee mug in the sink. People talk about inheritance like property is money. Sometimes it is. But sometimes inheritance is a room where someone loved you correctly, and now you have to decide what to do with the silence. I decided not to sell for at least a year, not because the documents required patience, though they did, because I needed to learn the difference between keeping something and being trapped by it. On the first Saturday of spring, Dad came over with a toolbox. He did not ask to come inside. He stood on the porch with his cap in his hands and said, "The back step is loose." I almost said no. Then I looked at the step. It was loose. Grandma would have called us both fools if I let symbolism break an ankle, so I let him fix it. We worked mostly in silence. He tightened boards. I swept the porch. He replaced a hinge on the screen door. I made coffee the way Grandma did, too strong and a little burnt. When he was leaving, he stopped near the pear tree. "I heard her say your name," he said. I looked at him. "At hospice?" He nodded. I told myself I was not sure. I let Paula be sure for everyone. That sentence was late. It was also true. "I needed you to be my father that day," I said. His eyes filled. "I know. You were Mom's husband instead." He nodded once. "I know that too." That was all we could do that day. But it mattered. Lee came in May. She brought no candle, no speech, no social media face, just a cardboard box of Grandma's knitting book she had taken from the house after the funeral. "I should have returned these sooner," she said. "Yes," she swallowed. "I also should not have let Mom keep you out." "Yes," her eyes filled. "I wanted the money." The honesty was so blunt I almost missed it. "I know. I told myself you already had Grandma, so the house was just, I don't know, balance." I looked at her. "You thought love was something to redistribute after the person died." She flinched. "That sounds awful." It was. She set the box on the table. "I am sorry." I did not hug her, not because I wanted to punish her, because I had spent too many years giving comfort before accountability had finished speaking. "I hear you," I said. She nodded. For now, that was enough. Mom did not come to the house. Not once, but in June, she left a voicemail. I did not answer the call. I listened later, sitting at Grandma's kitchen table with rain tapping against the window. Mom's voice sounded smaller than usual. "Mallory, I do not know how to talk about that day without making it worse. I keep starting and stopping. I did tell Simone I would handle calling you. I did not call you. I told myself Mom needed calm. I think I needed control." Long pause. I heard the video again in my head today, the part where she said she loved me. I keep wondering why I could not hear that without trying to win. Another pause. "I am sorry you were outside." That was the closest she came. Not "I am sorry I kept you outside," not "I lied," not "I used Grandma's death to pressure you." "I am sorry you were outside." A passive sentence for an active wound. I saved it anyway, not as forgiveness. As a beginning she had not yet earned. The first time I watched Grandma's recording alone, I waited until July. Rachel had advised me to keep a copy in the estate file, which I did. But the personal copy stayed, sealed in my desk for months because hearing Grandma's voice felt like touching a bruise. One Sunday afternoon, I made coffee, sat at Grandma's kitchen table and played it. I cried differently that time, not with shock, with grief. When she said, "Mallory girl," I could hear the effort in her breath. When she said, "You were there," I believed her a little more. When she said, "Accurate is not unloving," I wrote it down. Then I opened the blue caregiver notebook and read the last page. I had missed it before. Grandma had written it a week before she died. "Mallory worries paper makes her cold." It does not. Paper is how she keeps warm when people keep moving the fire. I put my head down on the table and cried until the coffee went cold. I wish I could tell you everything became whole after that. It did not. Families do not heal in one recording, one apology, one document, or one spring afternoon with a repaired step. Sometimes they do not heal at all. Sometimes the best you get is a clearer map of where not to stand. Mom and I speak rarely. When we do, I keep the calls short. She has not fully admitted what she did. She circles it. She gets close, then retreats into softness. I no longer chase her into honesty. If she wants truth, she knows the address. Dad comes by the house once a month to fix something that may or may not need fixing. We drink coffee on the porch. Sometimes we talk about Grandma. Sometimes we talk about weather. Sometimes silence sits between us like a dog we are both learning not to kick. Lee got a job managing inventory for a garden center. It is not glamorous, it is stable. She told me once that counting boxes all day made her understand why I liked records. I told her I did not always like them. I trusted them. She said maybe that was better, maybe it is. As for Juniper Street, I kept it. I moved in the following October, 1 year after the hospice parking lot. I kept Grandma's kitchen table. I painted the guest room green. I donated half the candle collection Lee had once convinced Grandma to buy. I planted rosemary near the porch because Grandma said rosemary remembered things, and I liked the idea of a plant with a job. The green recipe box sits on a shelf in my office. Inside are the old recipes now. Biscuits, peach pie, cranberry salad nobody liked, but Grandma made every year because she enjoyed tradition more when people complained. Behind the recipes is a folder. The will, the deed, the caregiver notebook, the hospice summary, the drive with Grandma's recording, and the vanilla lip balm, not because I want to live in the hurt, because I know what happens when only one version of a family story is allowed to survive. My family left me out of Grandma's final goodbye. They said she wanted peace. They said I brought tension. They said I chose not to come, but her nurse had recorded everything. And in the end, my grandmother's voice walked into the room I was kept from and saved my place at the table. That is my story. If you have ever been erased from a goodbye, a will, a hospital room, or a family memory, tell me what you would have done. Would you have stayed silent, fought the lie, or let the recording play? Share this with someone who needs to know that being accurate is not being cold. Subscribe to Hush and Tell Stories for more stories about family betrayal, quiet strength, painful truth, and the moment the truth finally gets its own witness. I will see you in the next one.